health workers who died from COVID-19 will be remembered at an event led by Deputy Health Minister Dr. Sibongiseni Dhlomo today. Dhlomo is scheduled to deliver a keynote address and unveil the Wall of Remembrance built by the South African Nursing Council in Pretoria. Over 1,300 medics have died since the virus was first detected in South Africa in March of 2020. The pandemic dealt a heavy blow to the health system and completely overwhelming many facilities. Well, members of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police are heading to Durban today. They are on an oversight visit to assess progress that's been made in clearing the backlog in DNA analysis. The committee will visit a lab in Amanzimtoti, and that's where operations were hampered following last year's floods. The committee says the backlog of over 240,000 DNA tests has had a negative impact on the fight against crime. Well, Newzroom Africa's Karinda Jagmohan joining us now live from Amanzimtoti. Karinda, good morning to you. Just how much of an impact has this backlog in DNA testing had in communities such as where you are?
Indeed, Oli. Well, this backlog of DNA analysis reports have had an impact most specifically at the courts across South Africa, here in KwaZulu-Natal as well. Now, over the past few years, we've seen an escalation in crimes related to gender-based violence, and in that regard, DNA evidence is one of the most key samples of evidence that can be given to the court in order for the justice process to take place, and of course for this to be used against the suspects before court. And with DNA, it's one of the most defining types of evidence that can be used in court, that can have an impact on the outcome of what happens there. But when there is a backlog of looking at the DNA samples and providing an analysis report, my apologies, there is of course an impact at the court. So we have heard over the past years that there's been a major backlog at a number of forensic labs countrywide, and here in KwaZulu-Natal as well. The lab here in Amanzimtoti has suffered through two floods. It was struck first by floods in 2017 and then most recently by floods that happened last year, meaning that the operations of these labs had to stop, and thus we didn't have enough workers or enough equipment to actually turn around reports regarding DNA samples. Just last month, though, the police minister said that much of the backlog in DNA samples has been cleared. A majority of those has been cleared. But today, at least with this parliamentary group, we'll be able to go into the lab to see what exactly is the status of this lab and what healthcare workers are saying in that lab in relation to turning around DNA samples. We're going to be joined by the Provincial Police Commissioner as well, which is important to speak to him today, considering not just the topic we're discussing today, which is the DNA samples backlog and the impact it has on the justice system, but also the number of escalating crimes we have seen in this province relating to shootings, murder, and as well an expectation of when we can hear an update regarding the murder suspects in the AKA matter, considering the reports we have seen countrywide. So I'll give you an update later today about what has happened here, what are the discussions about DNA samples, whether or not the province is actually capable of assisting courts with DNA reports, and I'll give you an update on what the Provincial Police Commissioner has to say with regards to crime in KZN, and whether or not we're going to see AKA's murder suspects in court this week.
Karinda Jagmohan, thank you very much for that update.